Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good and I'm very excited to do this interview. When I first received your book, I just wanted to let you know that something with your name caught my eye and I was like, where do I know this author? And I just remembered that you were one of the first writers that I ever started reading in English. And
Oh,
I just have that memory in me. And I was like, I love this book, trilogy, so much. And I was like, I cannot believe like I have her book now in Spanish. And I was like super excited. I was like, please let me do the interview. I really love Melissa. I'm reading the book and I was just like remember all the feelings that I had as a teenager. So I'm very, very happy.
oh, thank you so much for showing me that. That makes my heart so warm because that was the first book I ever wrote. Did you know that?
No, I did not. And actually, that was one of my questions. I didn't know it was your first book. It was a very good first book.
Thank you.
First, to start doing the interview about this book is I really love the idea that you had like a half king that in the middle of the day he's a normal prince and then in the night he becomes one with the shadows. How would you describe like the process of writing the book or like the whole idea
Okay, so
words?
the idea came to me just about a king who turns to shadow. King by day, shadow by night. And that idea came to me. And then I thought, okay, but why does he turn to shadow? And then I thought, okay, maybe he's cursed. And then I thought, okay, why is he cursed? Who cursed him? So the more questions I asked myself, the more the story developed. I can't say for sure what inspired me because the brain is a complicated thing.
It was difficult for you to create this magic system for them to live in, or how it was the process for building that word.
I did make it kind of hard for myself, and I didn't realize it until I was well into the book. But by establishing firstborn of the noble family is cursed, and then only the secondborn who's given in service to the temple receive a gift. And by establishing that, I kind of wrote myself into a little bit of a snag that luckily I caught and I figured it out. But by establishing so many rules, I really made it hard for myself. And it's funny because, as you know, I started out writing science fiction. And with science, the rules are in place. I can bend the rules, I can stretch the rules, but the rules exist, and I know how an author has to completely create all of the rules. It was tricky. So the whole magic system and the rules of the birth order and where magic comes from and who can possess it and who can't and how. It was, I'm not going to say it was hard to come up with, it was hard to obey.
Do you think it was very hard when they first met? Like, of course, he has his ideas, and you explain in the book, but Cerise has their own ideas, and they are very different between each other. So, do you think it was very hard for them, or it was difficult to like go all of that away and just focusing in what they're feeling at the moment?
The two of them were bound to clash because of their vastly different world experiences. Like you said, you have Kian, and he's been tortured, and he's afraid to hope, and he has suffered. And specifically, he has suffered because of the curse created by the goddess. So he sees the goddess as the source of all of his pain. The goddess is basically an enemy to him. And then you have Cerise, who's a devoted, faithful worshiper of the goddess. Cerise, who just lives for the goddess and has grown up in this temple completely isolated from reality. And so, this starry eyed worshiper of the goddess meeting this tortured soul who despises the goddess, they were bound to clash because, obviously. And that was a lot of fun to write. And it was fun to watch them influence each other and challenge each other. And I still love when he says, that goddess of yours. And then Cerise will say, she's your goddess too. And you know, that little back and forth
Yeah.
between the two of them. I love that. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, like you said, it's a very organic reason for them to clash. I don't love it in books when the main characters meet and then they clash for no reason. I see that sometimes where people, excuse me, people want the heroine to be like sassy and snarky and rude for absolutely no reason, just to create some kind of artificial conflict when the hero and the heroine meet, and that rubs me the wrong way. If they're going to clash, there needs to be a really organic reason for it, or else you're going to lose me as a reader. But with Cerise and Kian, it was just baked in to their whole experiences. Yeah, but I like how quickly they came to respect each other and to become allies. I didn't. This book has been described as an enemies to lovers, but I don't really think they really are enemies to lovers. I think that they are just on opposite sides of an issue when they meet. So maybe getting off on the wrong foot to lovers, as opposed to real enemies to lovers.
And do you think that affect her development in the next book?
I don't want to say too much about the next book because I haven't gone through revisions yet. But the way I plotted it is that, and again, keep in mind, this might change as I go through revisions. I wanted to watch what would happen to Cerise if the goddess took a step back. Because in the first book, we have prophecies and oracles. The goddess is very hands-on, kind of communicating with the world of men and setting things in motion and whatnot. And Cerise has lived her whole life being told what to do by either the Reverend Mother or priests or oracles, praying and getting answers. And I thought, what would it look like if Cerise had to trust herself? If Cerise didn't have oracles telling her what to do, what would that look like? So the way I plotted the second book was kind of challenging Cerise's independence and her ability to think for herself, and not rely so heavily on her faith. Yeah, I did try to explore that a little more in the second book.
When we first started the interview, you said that you feel more related to Cerise. Why do you feel like, I know you created her, but which part of you do you think you put in her?
Well, I don't think it's a huge spoiler to tell readers that Cerise is part of a religious cult. Her goddess is very real, but the order of religious devotion to the goddess is a cult operated by and manipulated by men. And I grew up in a religion that was very cult-like, and I was taught some really messed up things when I was little. Kind of like Cerise, I was just such a blind believer. Even when things didn't quite make sense, I would think, but why this if not that? But then, I was taught, if you don't believe this, if you're so lucky to receive this perfect gospel and you don't believe it, God will never forgive you for that. You'll just go straight to outer darkness for eternity. So when I started to have doubts, I would just turn them off, because no one wants to be cast out into outer darkness for eternity, right? So I would kind of just force myself to believe. And so everything that Cerise experienced is a much faster track of what I experienced. Unlike Cerise, I didn't deconstruct from my indoctrination over the course of a few months. It took me decades. I was like 40 before I finally had the courage to say, I don't believe this. This is nonsense, and I'm not engaging with this anymore. And it was very cathartic, very healing to write Cerise's journey and to make her braver than I was. Because all of the times I thought, oh, this doesn't make sense, but what if I'm wrong? I should probably just force myself to believe. Cerise didn't do that. She said, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And then I'm going to go further and ask what else doesn't make sense. She was the brave person that I wish I had been.
What do you think is the hardest thing for you to get a book release?
The hardest, do you mean the hardest part of writing a book or the hardest part of publishing, like the industry in general?
I think just publishing, like people have your book in their hands.
Oh, that's tough. Maybe the fact that the market is so crowded, thousands and thousands and thousands of books release every year, and it's very difficult to stand out. It's difficult to reach readers. The Half King is my 14th published novel, well, counting the Macy Beckett books. And there are lots of people who still, after all of these books, have no idea who I am. And And just reaching, just connecting with people, I think is the hardest part. And just the sheer volume. It's like publishing is an ocean and each book is a little drop. You know, it's very hard to stand out. I think that's the hardest part for me.
And just to finish, how will you describe the Half King in 3 words?
The Half King in 3 words. Love, struggle, triumph.
Yeah, I think that's all for the interview. I could be here like the whole day asking you questions and seeing all your progress. But thank you so much for sharing these minutes with me. I really have a lot of fun, and thank you so much for writing the book. And I hope we can see you again in the future and with your sequel coming up. I hope very soon. Well, thank you
Fingers
so much.
crossed. Thank you very much, too. And I'm so glad that you enjoyed Alienated. It makes my heart happy to know that you loved those characters as much as I did.